She stood at the check-in counter with nothing but calm grace and a simple smile. No designer bag in hand. No security entourage at her side. Just a soft-spoken voice and a boarding pass that would soon cause a stir. The airline staff did not see elegance. They saw simplicity, and they judged her for it. One glance at her casual clothes and understated appearance was all it took for the first sneer to appear. Laughter followed, quiet at first, then shameless. They whispered, they assumed, they dismissed. Passengers standing nearby chuckled behind their phones, nudging each other as if they had front-row seats to some inside joke. The staff smiled, but it was the kind of smile used to hide condescension, not kindness. They questioned her seat. They questioned her story, but no one in that terminal expected what would happen next. Within minutes, the doors of the exclusive terminal entrance would open, and a man with power in his stride and purpose in his eyes would walk through. Not just any man, the billionaire owner of the airline, the husband they had just mocked her for claiming. And in that moment, the laughter would stop. The lesson would begin. Sophia Alvarez had never been one to seek attention. At 32, she preferred quiet confidence over loud luxury. Her wardrobe was filled with clean lines and soft colors, not bold logos or glittering labels. The olive green wrap dress she wore today was one of her favorites. Elegant, understated, and incredibly comfortable. It had no designer tag, no social status stitched into its seams. And yet the people around her only saw what she was not. She was not wearing heels that clicked on polished floors. She was not dragging Louis Vuitton luggage or flashing a diamond-studded watch, but she was exactly where she was supposed to be, in the private check-in lounge of a five-star airline, holding a first-class ticket to the Maldives. The vacation had been a surprise from her husband, Daniel Alvarez, a man whose name alone carried weight in the financial world. Tech magnate, real estate mogul, billionaire, but at home he was simply Daniel, the man who brewed her coffee every morning and still kissed her forehead like it was their first date. This trip was a gift. No assistance, no calls, just you, he had said with a grin, placing the ticket in her hand. He had planned to join her at the resort 2 days later, after wrapping up meetings in Dubai. So here she was, alone, checking in for a luxury flight paid in full by a man who could buy the airline itself, and almost did. But as Sophia approached the counter, ticket in hand, she felt the weight of a dozen stares. The staff, polished and poised, glanced at her shoes, her dress, the soft leather of her carry-on, and in that quiet moment a silent judgment passed between them, the kind that stings more than words ever could. No one recognized her. That did not bother her. But being laughed at, that did. Still, Sophia said nothing. She offered her boarding pass with a smile, unaware that the next few minutes would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone watching. Because when you are married to a man like Daniel Alvarez, the world tends to pay attention when he walks into a room, and he was about to walk through that door. "Excuse me, ma'am," came the voice. Polite in tone, but cold in delivery. Sophia looked up to see the lead attendant standing behind the check-in desk. Her name tag read Claire in fine gold print, pinned just above her perfectly folded scarf. She smiled tightly, though her eyes remained sharp and dismissive. "This area is for our premium guests only," Claire said, glancing meaningfully at Sophia's outfit. Sophia offered a calm nod and handed over her ticket. "Yes, I am flying first class on Flight 702 to Malay." Claire barely touched the boarding pass, holding it between two fingers like it was damp. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at the screen. Another attendant leaned in and whispered something behind her hand. Claire smirked. "I think there has been a mistake," she said. "Perhaps your ticket was booked in economy and accidentally upgraded in the system. It happens." Sophia kept her posture straight. "My husband arranged this flight for me. The booking was confirmed yesterday." Claire raised an eyebrow. "And his name?" "Daniel Alvarez." The air shifted. The man, seated across the lounge, folded his newspaper halfway. One woman pulled down her sunglasses. The name was not unfamiliar, but no one here imagined this modest woman was connected to it. Claire let out a soft chuckle. "Right," she said, tapping away at the keyboard. Of course, and I am married to the King of France. A few muffled laughs echoed from behind the check-in counter. One of the attendants turned her back, pretending to straighten brochures to hide her grin. Sophia felt heat rising to her cheeks, not from shame, but from disbelief. The doubt in their eyes was not about the system or the ticket. It was about her, what she wore, how she carried herself, and how she clearly did not look the part. Another staff member, a young man named Ryan, approached with hesitant steps. He had been standing off to the side but clearly overheard everything. "Excuse me, Claire," he said quietly. "I think I can assist." Claire waved him off with a flick of her manicured hand. "No, thank you. I will handle this." Turning back to Sophia, she nodded toward the nearby economy desk. "Perhaps it would be best if you step aside so we can assist other guests while we clarify your booking." At that, a man in a navy blazer scoffed from behind. "Some people really will say anything to get a free upgrade," he muttered, not softly enough. Sophia turned slowly, her gaze passing over each smirking face. She had worked hard to stay composed, but the humiliation was piling on fast. "I am not asking for anything free," she said clearly. "I am asking for the seat that was paid for." Claire crossed her arms. "We have protocols for a reason. Security requires us to verify all premium class passengers." "And how often?" Sophia asked, her voice still level. "Do you question men in t-shirts and sneakers holding first-class tickets?" Claire blinked. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Sophia sighed and stepped back. She could have called Daniel. One message, and this scene would reverse itself in seconds. But why should she need a man's name to be taken seriously? Let them laugh. Let them look. Let them learn. Because within minutes, that glass door across the lounge would open. And when it did, everything, every smirk, every whisper, every assumption would come crashing down. And the people who laughed would not be laughing for much longer. The sliding glass doors at the far end of the private terminal opened with a whisper. A hush fell over the room, so sudden it felt like someone had pressed pause on reality. Even Claire, mid-sentence with another guest, stopped speaking. "To the management of this terminal," he said, addressing the room, "I will be reviewing your staffing policies immediately, because if your definition of service includes mocking paying passengers, then this place has bigger problems than just one embarrassed woman." Claire stood frozen, her arms stiff by her sides, face drained of color. "And as for you," Daniel said to her, "I suggest you spend less time judging people and more time remembering what your uniform is supposed to represent. Respect." He turned to Ryan. "You, however, showed integrity. My office will be in touch." With that, Daniel gently guided Sophia toward the private lounge. The silence in their wake was louder than the laughter had ever been, and just like that, the power had shifted. What had begun as quiet humiliation had ended in a lesson the entire room would not forget. The rest of the check-in process went by in silence. Claire stepped aside without another word, her hands trembling slightly as she fumbled with the system, pretending to work while avoiding everyone's eyes. No more smirks, no more whispers, just the cold weight of consequences beginning to settle around her. Sophia did not gloat. She did not raise her voice or shoot back a clever remark. She simply accepted her passport and boarding pass from the trembling staff with a polite nod and a quiet, "Thank you." That single moment carried more power than any argument ever could. Daniel remained by her side, not as a shield, but as a silent reminder of who she was, not because of him, but because of herself. He leaned in gently. "I am proud of how you handled that." Sophia gave a faint smile. "I am used to it. I just never thought I would face that kind of judgment in a place I once respected." They made their way through the terminal, bypassing stares that had now turned from judgment to quiet admiration, or perhaps shame. As they entered the private jetway, Ryan, the young attendant, jogged up behind them. "Mrs. Alvarez, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how they treated you." Sophia looked at him warmly. "You did not join them. That says enough." Daniel nodded at him. "Expect a call. There's a place for people like you in our company." Ryan's eyes widened. "Thank you, sir, really." Back in the terminal, the whispers continued. But they sounded different now. They were not filled with mockery or skepticism. They were filled with realization. And Claire, she remained at the counter, her smile gone, her posture wilted, replaying the last 15 minutes in her mind. Her arrogance, once her armor, had cracked, and this time she had no audience laughing with her, only silence. The plane would take off on time, but the story would stay behind, traveling from one staff room to another, not as gossip, but as a warning. Do not judge a woman by what she wears. Do not mock someone whose story you do not know, because the quietest person in the room may be the one who owns the room. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the turquoise horizon of the Maldives, Sophia and Daniel sat together on their private villa's deck, feet dipped into the warm, saltwater pool. The air was quiet, filled only with the gentle hush of the waves and the soft clinking of wine glasses. Sophia stared out at the ocean. "You know," she said, "I used to think I had to prove myself, that if I dressed the part, people would treat me differently. But now, I do not want to change who I am to make others comfortable." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you never should. Respect is not something earned by a price tag. It is something we owe each other. Always." She nodded. "I think today reminded me of that. Loudly. And for everyone back at that terminal, it was a reminder too, that dignity is not something you can measure by clothing or jewelry. It is how you carry yourself when others try to tear you down. And true power? It is using your position not to crush, but to correct, with grace. If you have ever been misjudged based on your appearance, background, or how you speak, you are not alone. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever experienced something like this, or seen someone else go through it? Your story might remind someone they are not the only one. And if this story moved you, subscribe and hit the bell icon, because we believe in stories that inspire respect, empathy, and quiet strength. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that stays calm and speaks last.